Hey y'all, Nicole here from I Love the Globetrots, checking in from my couch here in Niswa, Oman, in my apartment. Many of you may be familiar with this scene. This particular spot is where I was interviewed by a team with CNBC Make It last year. And as you know, that video blew up and went viral. And, last year when people were seeing the video, they were coming to my YouTube page and leaving comments and saying, you need to revive this page. We want to hear more. And I said, yeah, go ahead and follow me on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all the like. But I realized that, starting year 2026, one of the things that I really want to do is be more vulnerable and really share my story even more. So the goal of today's video is to talk a bit about why I left America and personally why I feel like many of you should too. Because, the house is on fire, y'all. And I think it's time for many of us in particular to get out. So I want to just talk a little bit about my story, why I left the States to move abroad. And over 15 years later, I haven't looked back since. So where do I begin? Many of you know I started out teaching ESL in South Korea for a little over 3 years. And the funny part is, I'm not going to say I had this big grandiose plan to leave America and never go back. That wasn't my plan originally when I decided to move abroad. Actually, I planned to just leave for like a year or two and then go back. But honestly, the expat life was calling my name apparently, and I guess it was just meant for your girl to continue to live abroad. So here we are over 15 years later. I am still gone, loving life abroad. But one of the things that I wanted to get across was the fact that when I first left the States, I actually didn't have like a big plan set. You have people over here tell you have to have X amount of dollars and you have to have this amount saved, which obviously is great if you are able to diligently plan like that. But personally, when I left, I was laid off from my job. It was like the Great Recession of late 2008, early 2009 is when I first moved to South Korea. So when I was laid off from my market research job, I was at that point, like many of you probably are right now, getting ready to run out of financial assistance, and so I was like, I need a job ASAP. So I said, I'll leave the country. I had girlfriends who had taught in South Korea and in Japan who inspired me. So looking at them, I said, well, you know what? This isn't a bad life. I might as well try for myself. But what I didn't anticipate was loving being abroad as much as I did. So after the first year contract, I renewed. After the second year contract, I renewed. At that point, I was like, okay, I think I'm interested in another country. So started looking and applying to opportunities to teach English in the Middle East. Oman, it wasn't even on my radar initially when I first decided that I wanted to leave the country, but it was God's plan apparently because I applied for a job to teach English in Oman, and here we are over a decade later and I'm still here. So, just by the grace that everything worked out the way that it had. But I just really felt compelled to share my story and give a little more detail because I know many of you saw the interview, and obviously I talked about my expat journey a bit there, but since then, I have been inundated with messages, people reaching out, wanting to talk to your girl about how they can get abroad, and everyone doesn't want to necessarily teach English, so I started offering, expat consulting services, and obviously I'm a travel advisor as well, so I plan trips for people who want to move abroad and travel abroad, what have you. But yeah, with the CNBC interview, it literally opened my eyes even more to how many people are interested in this lifestyle. It was just so incredible to see so many people reaching out to me on LinkedIn and finding me my travel advisor page and what have you, asked me questions about this lifestyle. So I literally started a whole brand new service of expat consulting that, I really wasn't on my radar until last year to really dive in and do that. So I am very grateful that I have had the opportunity to share my story. But just looking at the climate of what's going on back home, honestly, it's so overwhelming. And like being on the outside, looking back in and seeing how my family is being affected and how people all over the world are being affected, the current political climate. And it's just heartbreaking to see. So, one of my goals this year really was to just talk more about overcoming that fear of leaving, right? I know people are trying to figure out their game plan. And like I said, for me, I was at the point where I was like, I just need a job. I need a job. And I left. I didn't have this like huge master plan, which, like I said, some people may say that's not the best route to go, but that was what worked for me. And, like I told people before who have reached out to me, home ain't going nowhere. The U.S. is still going to be on fire. Well, so you might as well just think about what is best for your exit strategy, right? So, I mean, there are so many resources and so many social media groups, what have you. But obviously, people like me who have done it, we're definitely here to support you on your journey, So it's just so many different layers of being an expat that you do need to consider. Obviously, it's not the most easy lifestyle, but at the end of the day, like Nike said, just do it. Honestly, it really is that simple to just make a game plan, do your research, reach out to other expats and ask them questions, set up expat consulting calls if you need to. But obviously, there are just so many resources out here in the age of social media, and obviously AI is out there. That's a whole other story. You can use AI to help you on your plan, but there's nothing like that interaction of actually talking to someone and as well as using resources. It's so crazy because looking at Donald Trump and all of the nonsense that he is doing back home, I was realizing that now it's 2026, which is crazy to me considering that I left in 2009. But my book, A Guide to Landing an ESL Job Abroad, when I first was planning to write my book, I honestly was thinking about calling it Escaping Trump's America because this was during his first election bout. I think I published in 2017, which is crazy. But my guide, I'm going to plug it, you guys. That's what I got to do. But A Guide to Landing an English Teaching Job Abroad, which, obviously I've sold online as well as the physical version. But yeah, when I literally realized when I first decided to write that book, I was like, what am I going to call it? Obviously, I landed on what I landed on, but it feels like deja vu, the truth be told, the fact that we are in a second term and the house is on fire, the backyard, the front porch, all of the above. Like it's just ludicrous to see what's happening back home. So I'm like, yeah, y'all, get out if you can. And I know some people say it's not that simple for everyone. Of course not. Like I said, if you need to set up a game plan, decide in the next year, 2 years, but hopefully shorter than that, if you really are trying to get out, there are just too many resources for you not to consider it strongly during these times. So, like I said, I have my blog, I Love to Globetrot, ILUV, the number 2G, globetrot.com, which I'm trying to be more active on posting because in the age of AI, bloggers are being hit. But I digress. But, I have my blog, I have my Facebook group, I Love to Globetrot, that has expats in there as well. But there's so many resources. There's Tribe, No Madness, if you're not familiar. A lot of resources. Blacksit, my girls over there, the Exodus Summit. There are resources out there for you to utilize, right? So, that was one thing that I definitely just wanted to dive into, as well as it's not all glamorous. Obviously, it can be difficult being on the other side of the globe from your friends and family. But at the end of the day, like I said, home ain't going nowhere. There are flights. I honestly get to see my family more now that I moved abroad than when I was still working a regular 9 to 5 in market research in Chicago. I had 2 weeks holiday for the year. Now I'm an ESL teacher. I get 60 days. So, I just came back from Vietnam. I went a break just this past week. And in the summer, I still have 55 days to use to go home and see my family, alhamdulillah, as we say here in the Middle East. So, the fact that I have that time, it's a beautiful thing. A lot of people were saying when they saw my interview on CNBC, wow, you just look so at peace. You were just glowing. That's because I am. I am at peace. It's just like Oman is one of the safest countries in the world. And the fact that some people are just like, oh, you live in the Middle East, you'll be surprised at some of the comments. I know they say not to read the comments, but in the first days, your girl just couldn't help herself. Then I realized for my mental health and sanity to stop it, but the hate came in real, but honestly, there was more love than hate at the end of the day for your girl. So one of my goals, like I said, this year is just to keep inspiring, keep sharing my story, and to be a resource for those who are considering this expat lifestyle because it's great. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's been good to your girl. So, over 15 years, 2009, I left, and here we are, 2016, which is crazy to me. I can't believe it. But when I first came to Oman, I stayed here for a year, went to grad school, went to Germany to study humanitarian aid. I thought I would get into nonprofit work, but here I am. I came back to my cozy little nook here, and over a decade later, 12 years, back in Oman, and it's just been one of the best decisions that I could have made. Time will tell where your girl will end up in the future after the Middle East because, I don't plan on calling this my expat home forever. It's not particularly easy to stay in certain destinations, even if you've been there 15, 20, 25 years. I know people who have been here 30 years plus because it is a great place to be. But, we'll see what the future holds. I definitely don't plan on continuing teaching forever, but for the time being, life has been good. And I just want to be here to be a resource and to share my story, to be more vulnerable with you guys. So that's really my goal for 2026. Hold me accountable. Subscribe to the channel, I Love the Globetrots, here on YouTube, as well as Nicole.ILoveTheGlobetrot on Instagram and TikTok, because I do want to keep sharing content across the social channels. But that's just what I felt like sharing on my heart today here in the Middle East. It's a Saturday afternoon, back to work tomorrow. We have Sunday through Thursday work week. But I wanted to just hop on and hopefully inspire, motivate someone to really take it seriously. Like, get out of America if you can. The house is on fire. It's time to go. USA will be there when you are ready to go back, but give it a try. Choose your destination. Do your research. Reach out to fellow expats. And that's what I wanted to share today. So thank you for tuning in here to I Love the Globetrot, and I will chat with you all later. Bye.